Testing. 1, 2, 3. Check. Hello again, everybody. I'm Larry Hamilton. Welcome to my YouTube painting channel. Thank you for watching. Today we're doing watercolor painting, and might call this Watercolor Wednesday. I don't know. It's typically on Wednesday when I do these paintings. We're doing a 11 by 14 painting on Fabriano Artistico paper, cold press, 300-pound cold press. And we're going to try to see what we can do with an old cabin I found in a Montana ghost town some years ago. And I had an old photo sitting around. I thought, maybe I'll see what I can do with that. So let me get you over to the computer now, and I'll go through the photos that I had and explain the ones that are out on the website for you to download and use for your own purposes. And so hold on, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm here at the computer now, and this is the original photo I had taken. It's a pretty wide angle. It's got a lot of junk and debris around this old cabin, and it's a little bit too much to try to mess with. I've put this original photo out on my website for you to download in case you want to actually try this particular image of it. But the one I'm going to paint today is a little bit smaller. I actually cropped it down a little bit. And hi, Rocky. Rocky, good to see you. Welcome. So here is the cropped version. So it leaves a nice dark shadow in the foreground on the right, with a nice dark vertical on the right hand side. So that's sort of a traditional type of composition. And have a nice lot of sun on the top of the roof, so we can do something with that, and hopefully we can make something nice out of this. I'm going to put a few mountains. There are some mountains that are hidden back in this photo that you can barely see. I'm going to exaggerate those a little bit and make them a little bit bigger in my final version. But here's a cropped, or a grid version of it, of the cropped version, which is what we're using. And this is my standard 5 by 4 grid that fits 14 by 11 paper very nicely. I get this grid from a website called griddrawingtool.com, and it's provided by arttutor.com, free of charge. All you do is upload your image, decide what type of grid you want, how many cells you want across the top and vertical, and it'll lay those on. You can actually see what it looks like and then download it and use it as your reference. So I do that with many of my paintings that I work from photographs, as you know. And here is a black and white version that kind of shows me the real darks and the lights, and hopefully I can keep that in mind as I'm trying to do this painting. I also did sort of a thumbnail sketch that sort of gave me the idea to crop this thing down so that I didn't have so much debris and grass in the foreground, and sort of more accented the building itself and the roof and some of those interesting shapes. I also have out on my website the sketch that I'm using, which is very hard to see here. I'm sure it's hard for you to see that. It's very light. But on the website, the version you download will be a lot darker than that. And so that's what I'm going to work from today. I don't like to have a lot of graphite on my paper when I start a watercolor painting. So if I get it too dark, I usually erase some of it. But in this case, I just kept it light to start with. So I'm going to go back now to the easel, and I'll go through the paints and brushes, and we'll get started. Okay, here I am back at my easel, and I have my Sterling Edwards big brush palette here, and I have my paints around the edge, and have the brushes that I'll be using. I don't know if I'll use all these, but I have them available. I have these two bristle brushes, a medium and small. It's sort of a 1 inch, and like a 2-inch brush here that has some very nice bristles for doing blending and softening of edges. I have two flat nylon brushes here. This is a 1 inch and a 1/2 inch nylon brush, and I have about 3 rounds. I have a number 12, a number 8, and number 4 round. These brushes are sort of a synthetic type of bristle that they're very hardy. These things, I've had these for several years, and there's hardly any wear and tear on them. And then I have a script liner here that's number 6 script liner. Rigger, I guess you can call it that as well. And I'll start with these brushes, and let me go around the palette now and explain the paints to you. I've done this about every time, but these are Holbein paints, very beautiful transparent watercolor paint made in Japan. And first color here is Payne's Gray. Then I have Cobalt Blue, I have Ultra Deep Blue, I have Royal Blue, Permanent Violet, Green Gray, Umber, Burnt Sienna, Quinacridone Scarlet, Bright Rose, Brilliant Orange, Quinacridone Gold, Permanent Yellow Deep, and Cad Lemon Yellow. So those are the colors, and that's the palette and my brushes. And so let's get this thing started here, and I'll zoom in on my paper here. You can see I have my reference photos here right at eye level. I usually put them up above, but they're a little harder to see for me, so I moved them down here so I can get a better look at them, because I don't print them out very large. I guess I'm cheap. I don't like to print large images on paper on my computer, so I print these 4x7 or 5x7 images to use as reference. So I'm going to zoom in now and get this thing lined up so we can see it. And whoa, too far here. I have some remote controls that I can use that help me do this. Zoom out a little bit, and then I can put my palette on down in the lower right. Okay, I think that's what I want to have for you, and that's going to be what we're working from. So today, normally I wet this whole thing down and make it totally wet. So typically a wet and wet type painting, but today I'm going to try to modify that a little bit. I'm not going to put as much water on here. I'm going to try to control the softness of the edges a little bit as I go, so I don't have so much running and stuff to mess around with, because I do paint vertically. And that sometimes causes a bit of a problem here when I'm trying to control the edges, control the water, control the paint. And I should say, if you have a comment or question, please put it in the chat window, and I will try to respond. I have a computer up here by my easel, and I will be able to talk to you, and we can have a little discussion here if you have questions. I'm going to put a little bit of my Cobalt Blue out here. I'll get some of it out for the sky. Just make a little pile of it here so I can have it ready to go. And I have 2 water containers, one that I try to keep totally clean, and one that I get very dirty with my brush and cleaning my brush out. And I have a blotting pad over here that's made up of a roll of toilet tissue wrapped with paper towel, and it really makes a very nice blotter. It's kind of ugly, but it really does a good job. So let's go through now and put a little bit of clear water up here in the sky, not much. I'm just going to cover this area where the sky is, and we'll go from there. See if I'm going to leave some clouds up here, and I want some soft edges around, but I'm going to have room for some mountains in here as well. All right, so that's, you can't even see it. There's a little bit of blue tint there because I put that blue paint in my brush, but I'm going to go pick that up now, pick a little bit of that up, and just sort of start popping it in here. And you see how that water on the paper helps that run so nicely and makes soft edges. That's why people do this with wet on wet. It's because it gives you this nice soft edges. And I'm going to have another set of clouds over here. It's going to come down over the top of the mountain, and in this upper right corner I'm just going to darken it in. I'm going to have some trees and some branches over here. It's going to be darker, so I'm going to just leave it like that. And don't want a square cloud up there like that. See that square cloud? Take the edge and just sort of soften it, and that fixes it. So here I've come down to where the edge of my water is, and that's about all I need for the sky here. I don't need a whole lot more. Very quick, very fast, get this done. Put a little bit more up here around this cloud to identify it. I'm actually going to have some branches from this tree coming out up there, if I don't forget to put them in. All right, so that's enough for the sky. This photograph had a very plain, clear sky with just some very light clouds floating around. And so now the top of these mountains, I'm going to make them sort of a grayish color. I'm going to use my burnt sienna. I'm going to add a little bit of my cobalt blue with that and see what I get. And I get a gray. I think the gray is better if I use my ultra blue. However, I've done this before. I try to use that cobalt blue sometimes when it doesn't make it makes a gray that's a little more green in it. Cobalt blue seems to have a little gray in it. Ultra blue has more purple in it. So let me see here. Greg, do the paints need to be cleaned out of the palette after the painting, or do they keep in the palette? I leave these paints in this palette all the time. I never take them out. I just add to them. So I never clean this palette out unless I'm going to change a color in my palette. I leave them there. So okay, we're going to come up here now and start putting in something a little darker with this blue, and I don't know if you can see there is some green in that, just a little bit. But I'm just going to make this top of it. I don't want it to be really sharp. These are in the distance, and so I'm going to let those sort of fade off and fade out that way, and I can keep adding burnt sienna and ultra blue and getting a gray, a darker gray, changing the tone a little bit, changing the value a little bit. And as long as I keep it in the distance, it's not going to be a problem. I'm going to run these mountains over this way like this. I'm going to have some clouds or some trees that kind of go over this. So I just want this to be very light right here, like this, like that, soft edges. And so I just want to soften those edges down a little bit because I'm going to put some green in there, and sort of fill that in with some more. Let's get this blue, this ultra blue. It's got a little brown in it to gray it down. I'm going to put a little bit of my yellow in here, my lemon yellow into that blue. So I'm getting a nice little green color, and I'm going to start plopping this in right here. These are where the trees are going to go, and so I'm just going to kind of come down and follow this area. Doesn't even look green on the screen I'm looking at behind me here. So I'm going to darken that down a little bit. And I want it to come down here at the top of this. So all these trees back here are going to be very light, and but I want to have some dark edges here on the top of this, so you can see the top of this roof has to be, I want it to be very well defined around these edges. Some more blue, some more yellow, and I'm going to run this all the way down into the, I'm painting around this top of the cabin right here. Not painting the cabin yet, but you can see I'm starting around it. Now I'm using this brush to, because it's a bristle brush, it's got thousands of little brushes right in there. You can see all these little things, and when you tap like this on this paper, you'll get these very interesting shapes that look like trees. You see how nice and fine that looks? I'm going to put a few more in here. I'm going to run some up like this, run some more down like that. And because they're a little darker, they're coming forward. So I'm getting a good mixture of trees that are different values. Paint around this thing. Okay. Got one that goes over here that's really, really fine and sticks up like that. These are, I think, if I recall, this was in a mountainous area that was probably 6,000 or 7,000 feet above sea level. So these trees are not big, broad, fat ones. They're tall and skinny. So I'm just kind of finishing this off. So this painting is like, from here down, is pretty well finished, all the way down. I'm going to be doing more work over here, but right now, this part where I'm putting these in, I may come back and put a few more darker trees in to just sort of add more texture to it over there so it doesn't look so empty. Doesn't look like it's all one color. Okay, so over here I'm going to just keep going with a little bit of this to fine-tune a little of these, put in some lighter ones. We're getting sun that's coming over here. It actually comes down and meets the top of the roof over here, like this, these trees. See that edge? I got a hard edge there because I didn't wet this entire paper, so it created a hard edge, but this Fabriano paper is so forgiving. I can just take this brush and just scrub over that edge, and I just wipe it out, basically. Still see a little bit of it there, but if I go over it, it will continue to erode that hard edge. That's why I like these bristle brushes. They really are good for handling edges, making edges soft, making some hard, and keep getting some bristles. I'm falling out of my brush here. Actually, I can just let that dry and those will peel right off once that dries. All right, so these trees come all the way down here, really all the way down to this edge here. They basically make a interesting stand over there of trees. We've got some nice trees that bump up against this guy here. I'll move my palette over so you can see what I'm doing, looking at live. When I re-edit this video, I make it lighter. I make the palette, movement of the palette much better, and so you can see much easier where I'm painting so I don't block it off. Put some of this green over here and just finish that out with some nice colors here. This is going to be covered up in darker green anyway, so I don't really care what's over there too much. So I'm going to keep going here with a little bit more of this, with a few more darks in here, and you see I'm getting a little blossom here. That's because I put wet water or wet paint on top of wet paper, and that's always something you have to be concerned with when the paper is partially wet, that you tap more water in there from your brush and it gives you those blossoms, which sometimes look good, but sometimes they don't look so good. So I'm going to run some of these trees up toward the mountains so we have a little bit of that. All right, there's some more stuff down here. There's a lot of lighter areas. Got, let's see here. Get a little bit of my gray back here. Just in this area here, I want to have a, I don't know if that's gray enough. Yeah, probably is. Pick up a little of my Payne's gray, which gives me a little bit of a gray color. I want this ground to be kind of light and gray back here. All the way over there. So I'm kind of mixing this up. I'm going to have some few marks of trees over here when that dries. I don't want to get to it too soon. But I do want to soften some edges down here. I want this to be soft as it runs down into this area below and even below the house here. As I pick up some more green, this cabin, and start running this green over here, I want this to be soft edges both on top and on the bottom. Okay, so you're seeing a big negative painting here, negative being around the cabin itself, and so I'm softening these edges now so that we can have some connection of the grass to the house. All this over here is the same kind of stuff, pretty much. Put a few of these things in to make it look like we've got a full field of green out here. And back in here, let's see, make sure I have some room for that. Okay. All right, so you're seeing a lot of color going here very fast. Okay, so we've got a lot of this done except for the cabin and the big tree on the right side. So I'll be using a different brush for that cabin because I want to cut it in just a little better. And I'm going to be putting in some more things here. This is where the big shadow goes. So whatever I put, if I'm going to have a color over this that's darker than what's there, I don't worry about putting on this color right now, because I will be painting over it with another darker color. So trying to lighten up some of this back here, make it look like there's a little bit of a mystery going on back there in that woods. The plane was covered with trees. This whole area was covered with trees, and so all right, stop and look at this. All right, I think it's time to start maybe working on the top of this cabin. This roof, I'm going to try to keep it light, much lighter than it shows in that photo. So all right, over here I've got trees. I can come back and fill some of that in. I don't have to finish that off right now. So anyway, if we look at what we have here, we have mountains that are showing in the back. We have a little bit of greenery on the hill here. We got trees in the foreground, so we're getting layers of depth. We have the sky, we have some clouds, we have the mountains, we have a layer of grass that's going up the hill. Now we have these trees in front. So that every time you can put a layer in like this, it gives your painting more depth. And you almost have to do that artistically, because sometimes the photos that you have to work from, you can't really do anything with them. You can't, well, unless you're going to do a realistic painting exactly like the photograph, you have to use some artistic license. So that's what I did. All right, so this particular top of this roof here, I'm going to put just a little bit of water on it to get it so I can have some soft paint running here. I don't know where I got the blue from. Came out of my brush here. Okay, so it's going to be light, and it'll be more gray, maybe with a little bit of red in it. Using a little Payne's gray with a little bit of this quinacridone scarlet to, whoops, I picked up the wrong color there, folks. Back up here. I was using Payne's gray over here. I'll throw some of that in, and quinacridone scarlet. So that's going to kind of be my purplish color for the roof. I don't want it to be very, very dark. I want it to be light. So I'm going to throw some of this in and just pull it down and see what it looks like when I get down here. Comes down here. We got some different things going on. We got some change of this eave going across here. So this is all rickety stuff. It's not perfectly, not been just built. This thing's pretty old. They had a lot of ghost towns in Montana and areas in Wyoming where there's silver miners or other types of miners. I don't know what all kinds of mines were there, but there was a lot of them that came and went and mined the place out, and when it was mined out, they took off, left it whatever shape it was in. Okay, so I'm putting now this eave over here that's a little darker. I got it really dark at the bottom and lighter as it goes up. We do get a little bit of light bounce, so it should be a little warmer maybe at the top. And since I've got this flat brush here, or this 1/2 inch, I'm going to come in and start putting in some of this in here that is going to look like there's a bunch of looks like a log cabin type of construction here in this eave, this gable. So let's put a few things going like this across here. And maybe we got some interesting boards and stuff coming down here. That, throwing a few more colors here. So I'm coming down to the base of the, like a porch-like area here that's got a, it stands out. It's not dark enough. Give me a little dark here. Okay, have a little more of this color here in this area. Put it in like right in here. Some darker over here. Let's see, I'm gonna post there. Very dark down here. There's a couple of old leftover steps that aren't used anymore there. I'm gonna get my 1-inch brush here and just sort of soften some of these edges so it doesn't look like we're just sticking that on. It's going to be blending into the ground below here. Do that with this bristle brush. Okay, now let's look at this side. Let's see, here we got, okay, let's come along. I'm going to get a little more of this reddish color in here, mix it up with the blue, or with the Payne's Gray, and let's start coming down this front of the house here. It's a little more brown in it. I didn't want that color there, but we will use it. All right, so I'm just kind of blocking in some of this for the detail on this side of the house, the building. Across there, and hello, Patty M. from Uruguay. Welcome. Glad to see you're here. The bottom of this needs to have some soft edges as well. They're pretty hard right now. There is a little softness going on in some of this area right here, but I'm going to just sort of Soften that, soften some edges over here. So it doesn't look like it's all hard edge is the idea. Mix it up. Variation, variation. This is still wet. I don't want to get back in there. This is still partly wet. Around this window there's a, let's see if I can put a little border around the bottom of that. There, border on the top. I'm going to fill that in with some gray to make the window look like it's put in a few boards here to make it look like we've got so there are some things left that it's a pretty decent cabin. It's been around for a long time. I don't think you'd want to live there, but might be able to put somebody up for a night if you had to get out of the cold. Okay, I got another post coming down over here, very dark post. Okay, and some other things going on here, like this. We'll leave these poles and these rails light, and come back and put a little more dark in here. See if I can get this really dark. Something like that. And my brush, come back and just soften a little edge here and there so that it looks like it fits together. Okay. All right, how are we doing on time here? 32 minutes? All right, not bad. Put some really dark darks back in here, leave some white posts, try to get a little window, if I can show a window back in there that's open to the background. I want to put just a little of this green. Didn't put any in there yet, but I'm going to put a little bit of that back there to show it, let it show through. This other area has some green over here above, right in this area here. And this area here needs to be darkened a little bit. It's almost too bright over there. All right, like that. And come back on this side, make the same values show up. And soften some edges. Okay, so it lets it, you don't know exactly what's there, it just kind of is a soft, peaceful area. Okay. Now, see how light this is turning after I've finished that? It's lightening up quite a bit. All right, so I'm going to take my royal blue and my purple here, permanent violet rather. Permanent violet, royal blue, Payne's gray. Try to get a bluish, purplish, dark color that goes back in here. Oh, let's make sure I've got the right place. Okay, there's one little dark area. There's like a little attachment to this building here that's got a little deck on it, and like that. Up here I've got just a touch of that. Trying to leave a little window there that you can kind of see through. Like that. Put a little top over it, connect it to this roof here with some softening of edges. And soften a few edges down here. All right, and then using that same color, come back and leave another post here. The paint's getting a little bit too light, so I'll put a little more paint in it. Like this. And we're going to have another area here that's got room for this post. These flat brushes, flat-edged nylon brushes, really make it easy to do this with. Alright, so let's leave it like that. On the other side, I've got just a little bit of something sticking out here that's dark. I have some other things. I think this is probably like I don't know what this is exactly here, but I'm going to change the color of it and add some dots and dashes in there, soften some edges, and try to make it look a little scruffy over there. Okay, so that's not too bad. Let's make sure it's got this. I want this point to be pretty obvious out here. This eaves that sticks out and comes down like that. So I'm probably making this thing look better in my painting than it does in real life. But that's okay. That's artistic license, and we can do that. Okay. All right, so let me see here. Okay, so I'm going to come back now. This area here is a little drier, fairly dry. I'm going to come back with another slight coat of some paint. Some of this, I want to get a little more of the burnt sienna in there. And see if we can make this a little more specific. Just putting in another layer of transparent watercolor over this, so it looks a little darker. It was looking a little too light. It is in the shadow. It's under this eave sticking out here, and this is too light as well. It looks like there's light coming in, so I'm going to do a similar thing there. Come back, and after it dries, you can see how light some of this stuff gets, and so you have to kind of come back and manipulate it a little bit. I'm going to leave some room for a door or something in here, but I want to darken it down just a little bit. Leave a little light at the top. Over here, the same thing, same idea. This is all part of the front of this cabin and this porch that sits on the front. Okay. Now, let me see, what am I going to do about this roof? I want to come back and make another couple of, this is all dry. I want to see if I can maybe put a few things in here that kind of give it some rough texture. I'm using the flat side of the brush to let it just pull off whatever paint it will pull off. Something like that. Throw in a few other colors here maybe and change it up a little bit. This thing's been beat up and beat around and had a lot of who knows what happened to this roof. Pieces where they stick up. We've got some gaps and things in there that make it look like it's pretty old and pretty decrepit. So I'm just touching up some areas here with the flat edge of this brush to help it give a little more texture. That roof needs a little more texture. So I'm just pulling down, covering it up, and making it look old and beat up, which it is. Okay, something like that. Come back and get a few more of my wet brush here and just sort of soften these edges a little bit in some places so it doesn't look like it's all hard edge, right? Cover this up a little bit. There we go. Okay, that's a lot of the structure. I got some doors and dark things I want to put in here. I want to put a little bit of this window in here if I can get it to look right. Use a little of my blue. There's a window there. A window sill that's pretty white. These posts are all white. This little area right back here is supposed to be some sort of a color that stands out away from the, but it's not white for sure. Okay, so now let's see if we can put a little bit of this shadow down. There is a shadow that comes across this whole area here. So it helps you see there's an eave sticking up and that there's a kind of ragged old roof over the top, and it just kind of covers all this. Over here we've got some raggedy edges as well. Okay, let's leave that for a while and maybe go put a few more things over here on the left. I've got a bunch of, I don't know, boards and rocks and stuff over here. I'm going to just kind of throw some stuff in here and let them be whatever they are. There's some boards and type of things that are floating around over here that probably steps that came off of this thing. There's all kinds of debris and junk sitting over here that who knows where it came from. We actually, if I remember this place right, we actually saw an old outhouse that had like fallen into the creek that it was actually sitting over. And it was like they just put an outhouse out there and put it over a creek and let the water run wherever it went, and whoever downstream was drinking, they didn't know what they were getting. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so something like that, just to give it some interest down here in this corner so we don't have it just a bunch of greenery with nothing going on. I'm going to come back and put a few more rocks and some dark areas here and along the bottom of this building here to kind of identify the base of it, and some more debris. Actually, this is probably a good time to get my brush out and get a lot of paint in it. That's not the brush I want. I want my rigger, my script liner. It's got these bristles on it that are long and thin, and we can always put a few more splatters here. This always loosens the painting up. Throw a few of those in. This debris and junk, whatever's back there. And it doesn't hurt to get it up on the building. All right, so I just take that, get a brush full of very wet paint, and throw it up there. You have an outhouse over the creek where we play horseshoes. That's funny. I thought those were all done with, but apparently they're not. Yeah, that was kind of funny to walk along this path. There's a road out here, a walkway between these buildings and stuff, and to come up on that outhouse, it was just so deteriorated, but it was over the creek. Okay, let's see here. Let me, I want to try to finish some of this off. This is drier, so I'm going to come back now with just a little of my blue and a little bit of my yellow here, and see if we can get just a little darker. Maybe I need a little purple in that, or yeah, that probably would be better. To put a little bit of a few more darker trees here that are closer. Again, this is not in the photograph. It's just me using artistic license to kind of fill this area in over here. They do come down and run into stuff down here, so I'm going to just put in a few things in the ground. Something like that. So it just looks like there's a little bit of grass back there, and that's all you need. So let's maybe soften it, just a little bit of that. with just down here in the bottom, so it looks like it's connected. Don't want it to look like it was glued on after the fact. All right, how's this doing? That's pretty dry. I'm gonna, before I get off of this building, I'm gonna come back and put these dark, there's like a dark window in here, like that. It doesn't have to match the photograph exactly, but I'm trying to give it a little bit of a perspective at what you might see if you were to see this out on the, as you're out there touring around the old ghost towns. All right, it's still probably too light back there, but I think I'm going to leave it. I kind of like the way that looks back in here. A few soft edges. We could have some light bounce, I guess, coming back under there. That's not too far off the mark. Let's put a few more things here to look like we got some more boards. I'm just using this brush and letting it, it's all splayed out. And it's actually putting, I don't know if you can see it, but the bristles are splayed. And when I do that, I just paint like 4 or 5 boards. And something like that. Maybe there's a few up here. Put a few of those up this way. All right. I think I'm going to stop on this part of the cabin. Back here, that looks like that's going to need another coat. But before we do that, I'm going to start putting this tree in on the right side. Oh wait, I want to put some more of these trees back in here. I want to get this area finished. Back in here, there's a lot of open area there that needs to have some attention. So I'm going to come back and start putting in some more trees. Should be using my bigger brush here. It's better at that kind of thing than that 1 inch, half-inch flat for sure. If I can come in and start putting in different trees, push them up here in the, see how that works? Pretty neat process here with this brush. Purple and my permanent violet, a little bit of my blue, and getting, it's pretty runny right now. That's a lot of runniness in there. There's a lot of trees, a lot of tree trunks floating around back in here, so I'm going to try to leave some room for them. Okay, so I just painted a bunch of negative shapes that make it look like there's tree trunks back there and a bunch of trees. Up here I want to pick these a little darker. In here, put a few more dark things in front. Connect it to the roof here a little bit better. So these are all nice little fine, airy things that help give another layer. I've got another whole layer of trees in there, with ones that are lighter in the back and ones that are darker in the front. And again, they're these skinny trees that typically grow in the high mountain areas, or at least pretty high up in the mountains anyway. All right, any more questions? Let's see here. Oh, Greg, you must live out in Montana, buddy. I tell you, that's I've never heard anybody talk about a outhouse over the creek that they have to go bring back when it rains. That's pretty neat. All right, I'm going to leave that. That's going to be all dark up there anyway, so I'm going to leave that. I'm going to try to put in now this tree. So let's get a brown. Let's get our this burnt sienna. I'm going to get my umber out now and see if I can darken that down a little bit to get a couple of different tones. I want to get at least 2 values and maybe 3 if I can on this tree over here. I'm going to start down here in the bottom where it starts and just kind of work my way up. With that, come back, get a little bit different color, mix it up here, put a different tone in there. These are running down. Leave room for some soften this edge here. It's going to run right down into the shadow. This shadow is going to come over here and really be all around this area here. Needs to be darker than that, but we'll work on that. We can always come back and put a little more of that shadow in here after a bit, but I wanted to get that laid in. And so you see that tree, how those mixture of umber and burnt sienna work together to give a really nice dual tone on this tree. And it is, a lot of it's in the shadow. The sun's kind of behind here. Let's go up in here. We got to have some more of this really dark up here. Umber, that's almost pure umber right out of the palette. As they say in England, it's neat paint. When you take it right out of the tube, they call it neat. Almost pure burnt sienna here. Just kind of laying this in, leaving some room for the tree branches that we're going to paint over this, and running it right off the paper up there. All right, I'll put a little bit of that in. It'll help darken it down. Most of what covers this is going to be dark. But we'll throw that in, dab a few other colors in here to help it pick up some colors from other places. Maybe probably wouldn't hurt to have a little this reddish color in there. Throwing in some different shadows down here, leaving some gaps. That sort of dried up behind there what I put in a minute ago, so it looks like now it's more of a shadow that is connected to this tree. There's even a little bit of this shadow forms over here. And this little stuff down in the right hand corner is just some grasses and stuff, or some, I don't know if it's grass or, I think it's clippings off of this tree. They had a big, if you look at the original photo, the one that was the big photo that showed all this, it was basically a lot of clippings and stuff falling off the tree. Put a few more darks in here, that, and get my big brush here and soften a few of these edges. These edges can be soft. I don't want this edge to be soft. I want that to be kind of hard because that's the top of that shadow. Okay. So the question is, would this painting not have worked if we would have wetted the paper like I normally do? It probably could have worked, but it would work better if I were painting flat. When I paint vertically, I have to account for the fact that all this stuff runs and runs down, and I just didn't want to have all that running down into this cabin and have to deal with that. So I just sort of made a artistic decision here to not let that be a problem on this painting. Sometimes I find these paintings sometimes come out nicer when I control the water more than just throw a totally wet on wet scenario. So I try to modify my painting style kind of based on what I'm trying to do and what Put some more of these trees over there. I didn't get enough of those over there. They need to be on the other side as well. So let's put a few over there. Something over here to help fill that in. When we get up here, I'm going to have those darker branches over there anyway. So let's just let that go and put a few things in here that look like there might be some shadows or something. I don't know. All right. So that's pretty much what I want to do there. Now I want to get a good mixture of this dark green, really, really dark green. I'm going to pull out, I haven't pulled this green gray color out yet today. It's not a beautiful color, but it's a color that mixes with a lot because it's transparent. You can add a lot of stuff to it and you can get some really dark darks by taking that green gray and adding some permanent violet to it, adding some Payne's gray to it, and you can get some really, really dark green. Patty, thank you. It is kind of warm. I'm trying to keep it warm instead of cold. Usually these places look... Okay, so up here we've got all this tree stuff. So I've got this brush now full of this paint. Everything's dry. This tree is a little bit wet in some areas, but the areas that are wet, I'm going to just sort of go right over it and let it kind of merge together with what's there. So I'm going to try to get this like that. I want some darker. I need more dark. And it's going to dry lighter, of course, right? So we have to make sure we put it in very dark here, and if it dries too light, we'll come back and put some more in there. And you can take this brush and you can kind of push it like this. You see all those little bristles that make a paintbrush stick out there and give you those kinds of airy, look like a lot of tree branches and stuff sitting there that are kind of mixed together. So, and I want this to be mixed. I'm going to make this darker here because it's dissolving that brown that's underneath it, which is okay, but I'm coming back with a darker coat here to try to make it, because it does lighten up a lot. So it's this that's making this dark shadow down here, right? So I'm going to put a little bit of this dark in here now. And I may even soften a little bit of that. I don't want it on the edges. I don't want it soft on the edges, but inside this, I want it to sort of fit together. I want it to overlap and leave some holes, so some of this can be soft on the inside of this shadow. So it doesn't look like, I don't want you to realize I just painted that shadow right over everything there, which is what I did, but if I soften those edges, it certainly makes it easier and more palatable. Okay, up here, let me come back and just put a few more little things. I don't want to leave this corner totally naked up there. Getting close to being done. I'm right at an hour. Come on, folks. There we go. Green, green. And some of this green, I'm going to put another highlight here of this yellowish color on top of this to sort of lighten it up, to show there is some sun getting through. Right in there, maybe a little sun right in here hitting. So I'm putting this wet on wet, so I'm really taking a chance with this, but it does lighten it up. I just put this lemon, cad lemon yellow right over the top, and it's holding up against that dark underneath. It's kind of like where you charge another color in. They call it charging when you drop another color into an existing color that's still wet. Charge it. Okay. Let me see what I'm missing here. Pretty well done. I think maybe this little area back here needs another coat of darkness maybe back in here. I'm going to just put a little bit of stuff. Leave some of it undefined back there, mixing up a little bit of color that's, I'm not painting over the whole thing, I'm just painting over pieces of it. So it looks like there's something back there going on. And, all right, you know, I don't think Lindy is here, but I'm going to beat her and Rock and Greg to the punch. Put in a couple of nice little birds up here, some places. Just a little one out here somewhere. 3, right? I could do 5. All right, I'm going to take this very light coating of blue, not blue, I'm going to, I guess, a gray coating. But on some of these white areas here, I'm going to just sort of tone them down just a little so they're not so in your face. The ones that are really out in the sun is okay, but I want to tone it down just a little in some of these places. Sometimes you can leave too much white floating around in your paper and it's kind of bothersome to some people, I think. Okay, what else? I think I've pretty well exhausted all my tricks here on this. This is all running down over here. Okay, I don't want that to run, so I'm going to touch it with the paper towel here. Try to make sure I have a little blob of paint there that's getting ready to run. I don't want it to run. So just touch it, see if you can pick it up. All right. Glad you guys like this. Hopefully it looks better than the photo we started with. Take some of those things and let them run them down just a little bit if they want to run down. Just all right. I think that's enough. Maybe just as I'm standing back looking at it, I see I could probably have just a little more dark on this side of the, and we could leave some angular shadows in there that kind of make it look like there's some two tones of stuff. And maybe even just a little more of some trees back in here. Touch it up just a little. All right, I'm going to make it worse if I don't stop. So I'm going to stop and get my script liner out and remember how to spell my name and put this on here. Right over here somewhere. All right, hope you like that. I hope you give it a try. I'm going to back up here and I realized I shut my palette off on you, didn't I? Oh boy. Well, I'll be putting that palette back on when I make the make the final version of this. And so let me back up here and say thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate your comments, and if you like this, please share it with your friends. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and check out my other paintings. I have about 150 paintings, I think, videos out on YouTube. Half of them are watercolor and half of them are oils. So I try to do this about twice a month and try to do one oil and one watercolor. And so you can always hopefully count on me on the 3rd Wednesday to do an oil painting and the 4th Wednesday of every month to do a watercolor. So this is the 4th Wednesday. So I think that's all I want to say. If you like the music ahead of this, Antonio Romo lets me use his music. Please check out his website at antonioromo.com. And so I think that's enough for today. And until I see you again, this is Larry Hamilton saying so long for now. Bye-bye. There we go. Okay. Okay, Greg, thank you. Appreciate you being here.